Brooks, Kushner,
Here.
Lund,
Here.
Bentley,
Here.
Holmberg.
Here. All right, and no one had called me and he's ill, so we're all here. Adoption of agenda.
Move to approve.
Kushner,
Yeah.
Lund,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Holmberg.
Yes. All right, first up, item number 4, American Rescue Plan Act funding discussion. You've got a review for us.
Yeah, so. Yeah, just a second. That's a little too small for me to read there. There we go. Okay. The American Rescue Plan Act was passed by Congress to help the United States recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. As a quick reminder, these are the funding objectives that were presented to us. We were slated to receive about $3.76 million of direct allocation from the federal government. However, as some folks have decided not to draw down their funds, or kind of how the numbers shook out after the census, we actually will be receiving about 4.12 million now.
That's good. Thank you, because I noticed in the finance report that we got 2 million and it was good. So we got more.
We got a little bit more.
All right.
Um, So as a reminder, what the eligible uses are, we have to use these funds to support the public health expenditures, address negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergency, replace lost public sector revenue, provide premium pay for essential workers, and invest in water, stormwater, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. A few things to note about this. We cannot demonstrate a loss of revenue. One of the things that Marcella has talked to you all about quite a bit is that during the pandemic, we actually stopped a lot of our leakage outside of Warrensburg, and probably brought some folks in from the smaller communities who normally would have went to Kansas City, but they decided to come to Warrensburg to shop. So we cannot demonstrate a loss of revenue due to the pandemic. Another challenge that we face is provide premium pay for essential workers. We did look into this. The state of Missouri restricts the giving of bonuses. So we are not allowed to give our employees bonuses for work that has already been performed. Again, we're trying to figure out a way that we could do it equitably as well as sustainably. We do think with the budget that we put together for this year, and with the work that we did with public safety salaries, that we have been able to make us more competitive in that field. However, we are not going to be able to do anything with premium pay with ARPA funds. With the invest in water and stormwater and sewer, when this was originally put out, stormwater was not included. However, after lots of discussion, they have determined that stormwater can be included in this. However, streets are still excluded unless you can demonstrate a loss of public revenue. So we have been working to put together some projects to put in front of you all for the support of public health projects that we have put together. We are looking at phone devices and the Zoom year 1 subscription. Those two projects actually go together. So our phone system is over 20 years old, and what we would like to do is to update that and replace it. It will help us if we ever have to do social distancing again. It will help us with if we have to quarantine someone, if we need to have someone work from home. With the Zoom phone system, what will be transitioning over to the phone device, an individual who is eligible to telework will actually be able to pick up their phone and take their phone and their computer home with them, connect to the internet at their home, and be able to take phone calls just like they were sitting at their desk at City Hall. With the so that's approximately $70,000 or $60,000. The Zoom year 1 subscription, we do know that will be an ongoing subscription cost. However, we're already paying for our current system. So this will actually be cheaper than what we are paying with our current system in next year's budget. With the PD vehicle and squad room PC upgrade. So we would like to, for similar reasons that we upgraded all of our computers at City Hall and all of our staff computers to the laptops with the docking station. We're essentially going to be doing that similar upgrade with our PD vehicles. So they will be able to have the docking station in the vehicle. Each officer will have their own laptop. So they will be able to take their laptop with them. They can do their reports either in the vehicle, they can do their reports. They don't have to necessarily be in the squad room. So this will help, again, if we are in a situation where we need to socially distance our officers and not have them all in the squad room working together in close quarters. So the other two items that we have on here, you will see they're italicized with an asterisk. We are still working through what our eligible projects are and what might qualify or what may not qualify. We're still working with the interim final rule. So we have not had any final direction come down on this, but we are still just trying to explore some things, wanted to get this in front of you all, open it up for discussion, hear your feedback on it. So these are a couple things that we're still trying to figure out, but wanted to hear what you all had to say. The Encode Upgrade, we are eventually going to have to do that anyway. We'll be upgrading it to the cloud. This would be, again, so employees, if we have to go home, we have to work from home, we will be able to have access to all of those records that are in Encode. The public safety radio upgrade. We know that we need to upgrade our radio system. Within the next 7 or 8 years, the countywide system is going to be obsolete. It's a very expensive upgrade. And so we are trying to figure out a way to make this qualify to support a public health issue. Now, you will see that the state of Missouri has determined that upgrading their radio systems to most winds is an eligible expense. However, that is if you can show a loss of revenue. And as I mentioned, we are not able to show that loss of revenue. However, we still feel very strongly that we are going to try to demonstrate that we have seen an uptick in crime in some neighborhoods of poverty or some lower income households that is related to COVID. So we are still working with data to be able to show that this would be an eligible expense supported through this particular category. The other piece of this, we want to make sure that we are not getting ahead of our community partners. So we know that the county, the sheriff's department is on a particular radio system. The city is on a particular radio system, the 911 dispatch, central dispatch, and all of our other partners who use this radio system. We don't want to get too far ahead of them, but we would just like to start this conversation and continue having this conversation about what it looks like to upgrade our radios. So that is a total under the support public health category, about 1.2 million. To address negative economic impacts, what we are looking at is a code compliance grant. So what we would like to look at is putting together funds, a grant for our business owners to apply for that would allow them to bring their buildings, their businesses into code compliance. We think a large portion of this will actually be those businesses who do not have sprinklers to meet fire code, but it could also look at ADA compliance. We might be able to develop a program that would allow, if there's a code out there for the curb and gutter, because we know that that is also a stormwater issue. So we might be able to make those grants available to our businesses in our community through those code compliance grants. Again, we have tourism grants that are on there. Again, that clearly falls into trying to bring in folks to our community to really help those industries that were hurt the most, the restaurant industry, the hospitality industry. We are looking at grant programs, and as we're putting together these projects, we are really trying to put together projects that are not going to have a lot of administrative burden on our staff. We don't know what all the reporting, what all documentation is going to be required. That's still being figured out by the state of Missouri, what they're going to require of us. So as we're putting together these projects, we're trying to be very mindful of what this means for staff. So with the tourism grants, we know that the WCVB already has a grant program in place that we would just replicate and be able to have more money available to them to bring in more of those events. With the code compliance grants, we would be developing that one from scratch. We think we have some good foundation on some of our other grant programs that have already been established, but we would be developing that one from scratch. For the replace of lost revenue, while the city cannot demonstrate a loss of revenue, the Parks Department can. They were not able to hold any of their sports, any of their recreation leagues. They've had to pause their memberships. They were not charging monthly memberships when they were closed during coronavirus. So they are able to show a lost revenue. So one of the things that we are trying to possibly determine if it could be eligible would be the ADA restroom at Cave Hollow for approximately $150,000. Invest in water, wastewater, and infrastructure. So we've already talked a little bit about the wastewater treatment plant blower project, and you know that we have 2 blowers, one at each plant that we need to have upgraded, and we did half of them this year. But that we also have this additional project that we want to get done with the SCADA upgrade that we need at both plants. So that is a project that is in there. The other project that we have in there is retire the Enterprise lift station. So if you're not familiar with the Enterprise lift station, that is that hot pink dot right there on Enterprise. If you will notice about everything that is east of PCA Road, and then kind of goes over there, all of that wastewater gets to the Enterprise lift station. It's in a forced main that gets pushed south of Highway 50 and enters into our system then to connect to the east interceptor. So you'll see there's that lift station is it is always breaking down. We're replacing the pumps. It is at capacity. And then we know that we currently have a subdivision, the Winterset subdivision, that is also getting ready to go online. That's just across the road there from the Enterprise lift station. So we would like to take that Enterprise lift station offline. We would like to retire it and then connect and extend the main from the I think it's Clover Creek subdivision. So extend it from Clover Creek subdivision, and it would likely enter into the Cahill subdivision main system. So the other project that we have on here is the Stormwater Project. Again, this evening, we want to get feedback from you all on the projects that we put forward. We would like to do a significant stormwater project with these funds. We have a stormwater master plan that is in place. We would like to take a look at what some of those larger projects may be. As you know, we do not have a dedicated funding source for stormwater. And so this would be an opportunity for us to highlight a very significant project in our community and demonstrate why it would be so important for us to have a steady stream of income or a steady stream of revenue for our stormwater system. So points of discussion, again, we are still working with the interim final rule and determining what all of our eligible projects are. I mentioned explore additional opportunities. I forgot to mention in the last slide. DNR sent out a survey the other day. They actually have 400 million of their own money, and they are looking for shovel-ready projects in wastewater. So while I mentioned that we wanted to do the blower project, we have our SCADA upgrade project. We have our, we want to retire the Enterprise lift station. And then we also know that we have about $12 million in plan upgrades that we want to get done. So we are going to be working with DNR to see how much they're willing to give, how much we can get from DNR on some of these projects. If we can save that 1.1 million that we're looking to put towards wastewater, if we could use that for another stormwater project, a bigger stormwater project, or another project, we want to continue exploring that. So in this evening, we would like feedback on all these proposed projects. And then just a reminder that the funds must be obligated by December 31st of 2024. Are there any initial thoughts?
I'm just processing right now.
And I always have thoughts. So code compliance is nice. One of the things that I know Warrensburg didn't do at one point was the sprinklers. And I know as somebody that's had a building that had a fire internal to it with sprinklers, you really do wish you had those. So I think that's how I met Jim really one day in person. But anyway, they had to respond to our building. So I think code compliance is important. On the Cave Hollow bathrooms, it needs to exceed ADA. ADA is acceptable, but the grade for wheelchairs and for changing station stuff, but Danielle Fessler is aware. I mean, it has to hit ADA, but you can exceed it, and it should, if we're gonna do something at that particular park. And then stormwater. Every community meeting I go to, I try to tell folks that we gotta do something, so wherever we can do that, I think it's good. And it is frustrating about the premium pay. I'll be candid with you. Not your fault, not, I mean, I just, that. I guess there's nothing we can do, there's nothing we can do, but it's frustrating.
Is most of them stabilized, chief?
It seems to be, I haven't heard anything about it not being
Right, because in the first 5 years of it, it was pretty much the biggest piece of junk in this part of the area.
What is it?
The radio system they're talking
Oh,
about.
okay.
discussions we've been having with the vendor, and the people from Motorola talk really highly of it. The nice thing about it is it doesn't cost us anything to get in, unlike the Mars system in Kansas City. Through Mid-American Regional Council, we have to pay a fee to get into it. This one, there's no expense to us at all except for buying the equipment.
Yeah, I just know that in the first 5 years of it working, the closest hard tower was in Allville, Missouri, which you couldn't hit for love nor money.
They got a tower, not a big tower, but they got an antenna on the tower at Central Dispatch.
They do now?
For this area.
Okay.
We're gonna be testing the radios out on Wednesday. We're using them for our active shooter drill at the hospital. So it'll give us a chance to see how they work for us. And it's gonna be a lot better equipment than what we have. What we have is really outdated. And this is modern equipment that we don't have to pay to maintain.
Well, VHF's a thing of the past, so. Okay.
You could stand here and talk to somebody in St. Louis under affordable.
Yeah, I was gonna, does everyone know what, when we talk about the Most Winds radio system, does everyone know what that is on city council?
I'd like if you could send those out to us so we can think a little bit more about them,
Sure,
or at least to me.
sure.
It hits a lot of departments. I mean, it shows some homework, and everything fits pretty much our strategies.
You know, that was one of the things as we sat down, we tried to balance our internal needs versus our external needs in the community. You know, I will say with the PD vehicles or the PD vehicle squad room upgrade, we actually did include that in our capital budget this year. So that will actually free up some funds for us to do some other vehicle replacement. Like I said, just trying to balance internal, external, trying to make sure all departments were receiving a little bit of this or being able to benefit from the ARPA funds. But I will put this out on the website. I wanted an opportunity to present this to you and to have this discussion prior to submitting it in a packet, just because I think there is some information in here that, taken without any context, without our ability to explain kind of where our heads were at on it, that we, didn't want to get ahead of council on that. So particularly with the public safety radio, I just want to make sure we're being very mindful that we are not getting ahead of our community partners on that. So we will be working with them, and if we decide that, most wind might not be the best direction to go, we might not end up going with most winds. We might have to look at something else. Okay.
Are any of our community partners receiving funds as well?
So the county gets about 10 million.
Okay.
Talking a little bit about the conversations, what they're kind of trying to look at. They've been really waiting to see what's going to be eligible projects, how they want to spend that. The other jurisdictions, I do not believe that they are going to be getting like the fire department the 911 dispatch, those other taxing jurisdictions, I do not believe that they're going to be getting their own direct allocation.
Any other questions? Okay. We'll move on to solid waste to service discussion.
Solid waste management. I give a quick overview of what our current city code requirements are and what our current role is with waste management here at the city. So first and foremost, we really have two codes that govern or control solid waste management in the city. The first is that residents and businesses are required to obtain waste disposal services from a licensed waste hauling company. It is required to be at least once weekly. We have a waste haul, and then we also have a waste hauling company is required to get a business license to operate within city limits. This business license is similar to any other business that is operating in the city of Warrensburg. So the restaurant gets the same business license as the waste hauling company. The city's current role in solid waste management is code enforcement. So code enforcement in making sure that we have someone that's not piling up trash at their home, making sure that trash enclosures are being well maintained, that we don't have trash blowing out of all over the neighborhood. We also answer trash related questions. This one has picked up lately. Processing business licenses for haulers. But previously we only have, I think about 3 to 4 haulers that we had licensed in the last several months. We probably have 5 or 6, maybe 7 now that we've recently licensed a couple more who are entering the market. We work with the location of trash receptacles on site plans. So when a new housing development, a new multifamily housing development comes in, or an apartment complex is being built, or a new restaurant is coming in, we work with them on where they're going to put their trash receptacles and how they're going to be screened from view on the right of way. We coordinate the citywide cleanup. So twice a year, we do the citywide cleanup with the bulky item and brush cleanup. We pay for that out of general fund, as well as we're the ones who do the RFPs for that and get those proposals in. We also provide a site for brush, as well as formally we provided a site for recycling. So we had a dumpster that was set up at Washington and Pine, where our residents could dump brush, their grass clippings, leaves, branches that may have fallen during a storm. And then we had the recycling center where residents of Warrensburg could dump anything that they were not having recycled at the curb. Let's talk a little bit about the current challenges that we've been experiencing, because we were asked recently that this is what our role, really bringing into light what the city's role is in solid waste management. We recently had the transition from Heartland to Republic. So Heartland has been the only hauler in Warrensburg for several years now, and we do know that most of our residents were using Heartland. And so when the transition to Republic, we know we were having challenges. There were not enough drivers. We were not familiar with the routes. There were trash routes that were not being picked up for 2-3 weeks. And then the other issue with the recycling center, I just wanted to remind everyone why we no longer have it there. We were having a lot of abuse. People were not recycling right. People were just dumping trash there. So after we closed the site, we actually removed the dumpster. We still continue to have people who blatantly dumped illegally here. So I know it is a concern and people really want the city to provide that recycling center, but without folks who are willing to, and I know it's always the bad apples that spoil it for the whole city, but this is really a challenge for us. And then just with the recycling market and nationwide and kind of what's happened since China quit accepting our recyclables, because of the contamination in the recyclables. We did not produce clean recyclables in the United States. that's just created a lot of issues. And I know right now, Republic has postponed picking up any recyclables at this time. And so even if we had a recycling center, we would not have anyone who picked it up and took care of it. I do want to point out that the brush dump that we have, as well as the recycling center previously, those were free of charge to the city. Heartland did not charge the city for that brush dump or for that recycling center. And Republic has honored that. So they are continuing to provide that brush dump pickup for us free of charge. And that is still open. I have talked to, well, I'll save that for the next week. So does anybody have any questions? Is everyone aware of the challenges that we've been having with Republic and the challenges that we've been having with the recycling center?
We're not citing anybody for mass piles of trash or anything, are we, since it's not being picked up?
No, so that was, that was a thing. We heard, what is the city's role in this? So the only two ordinances that we have, we would have to go over the resident or the business owner for not getting that trash picked up. Or the only code that we could have written, the only ticket we could have written would have been to the property owner or the
Right.
business. So no, we have
Right.
not been writing tickets to anyone for that. I know another comment came up that we should be pulling a business license for a hauler that's not doing a good job, but at the same time, if we pull that business license and we don't let them operate in our city anymore, who's going to come in and do it? So we have not enforced either one of the two codes that we have in the last couple months. So from some historical context, the state law requires the city to have an adopted solid waste plan. We are currently operating a solid waste plan that was adopted in 1993. The city conducted a solid waste study in 2005. But it never adopted the new plan or made amendments to the Chapter 11 as recommended in that 2005 study. Recommendations that were made in the 2005 study were to implement residential solid waste and recycling services contract, implement an integrated solid waste management coordinator. We wanted to hire somebody to come in and manage that contract and do some education on recycling, on solid waste. So this was just a staff person here at the city. Implement a licensing and inspection program. So this really would have been an interim between when the plan was adopted and when we would have had our citywide contract in place. We would have had additional licensing requirements. They would have been treated, waste haulers would have been treated differently than a restaurant. We would have had some differentiation in there. An inspection program would have been put in place to make sure that their trucks were in good operating and safe condition. There would have been a ban on residential yard waste burning, implemented recycled content purchasing policy, and supplement curbside recycling program with the drop-off program. So we do know that one of the things we did supplement the curbside recycling program with the drop-off program. I think that was in place for 3 or 4 years.
We had the program at Walmart, I would say that was 4 to 5 years, once a month on a Saturday morning. That was prior to the study and a couple of years into it, and then Sheltered Workshop provided drop off for many years. And then it went to the location the city operated for, I think, 3 years.
So that was really the only recommendation out of the 2005 study that we already had it in place, but we kept going and it kept trying to keep that in place. So the first one is the big one, the implement the residential solid waste and recycling services contract. And that's the one that we've been being asked, what is the city going to do about solid waste management in the light of the transition from Heartland to Republic? So we have 3 options. We have the option to do nothing, to continue the status quo, to work with Republic to try to get through this transition. Residents can continue managing their personal contract. They can bring in someone else to provide that service for them. We could look at implementing this a citywide contract. We could look at going through that process, and I have more information coming up on that. The third option, we could look up standing up our own trash utility. I estimate that it would cost us about $10 to $12 million to start running our own trash utility. That would be the first year. And then ongoing, I estimate that would probably be about $3 to $5 million to continue operating that trash utility. That is very rough, back of the napkin, I've not spent a whole lot of time on that. I did a little bit of research into it, and I just wanted to make sure you all had that number if that is a route that we want to continue looking at. So the citywide contract recommendation, the advantages and disadvantages that were listed in that 2005 study. As you might expect, advantages and disadvantages, there's always one to combat the other. What was being proposed is it would have been a pay-as-you-throw system, meaning that the more you throw away, the more you pay. And it had not been fully fledged. The design of the program had not been fully fleshed out yet. So you can see, you know, it could possibly lower cost, but it could also possibly increase cost. You know, we would just have to keep kind of going through and really spend a lot more time figuring out what our program would look like. One of the other items on there is reduced truck traffic. And this is one that we hear a lot when we talk about the benefits of going to a citywide contract. Would be when this study was done, there were probably 5 or 6 haulers that were in the marketplace. So at any given time, there could have been 2 or 3 different trash trucks on the same road on the same day, tearing up our streets, causing a lot of wear and tear. And we do know that is true. Over time, over the last several years, that situation has worked itself out, as Heartland was really the only hauler that we had in our community. However, over the last couple months, as I mentioned, we've already seen new haulers entering the marketplace. So we know that we might be in a situation again where we have 5 or 6 companies that residents are trying to contract with, you know, 5 or 6 different folks, and we could have increased truck traffic. So kind of what that citywide contract process would look like. We require a 2-year grace, Missouri law requires a 2-year grace period before we can implement that solid waste contract. That would give us time to design our program, prepare requests for qualifications, and educate residents on the change that would be happening. When we look at designing a program, the things that we have to talk about is if we're going to do a unit-based system, that pay as you throw. So are we going to have, you know, everyone gets 1 tote, and if you have more than 1 tote and you have to buy a bag, then you are going to have to pay more. Would we want to have curbside recycling? Would we want to have curbside yard waste? Would we want to incorporate those citywide cleanups? And then we of course have to talk about billing. We could add the billing for the trash utility onto our sewer. However, we would likely need to look at hiring that solid waste management coordinator to help us manage the contract, manage the billing, manage a lot of the education pieces that would come along with it. So the conversation that was had, and so we did the study in 2005. And actually, this conversation about what it would look like to do the citywide contract did not take place until 2010. So here is a little bit of a rundown from public comments and how city council, the sentiment that they were having at that time, that they would put local haulers out of business. Competition among haulers keeps prices down. It's unfair to elderly residents. The idea behind that one, I want to make sure I take a moment to explain that. A lot of the elderly residents went to a bi-monthly pickup because they don't generate as much waste. And so they were only having their trash picked up twice a month. And that was something that they had coordinated with the current haulers at the time. An increased expense to the city and recycling should not be mandated. City council talked about it would be a beautification as a goal of the city. So if we did have a citywide contract, everyone would have trash services. They would have to pay for it. It would be similar to the sewer. So we wouldn't have, you know, a house that wasn't obtaining those trash services. They could, and having trash pile up on their deck in the backyard. You know, we would have that ability to tell whoever our contractor was, hey, there is, you know, trash on the curb in front of this house. You need to pick it up. We could do decreased wear and tear on the streets. However, there was a note that they'd heard a lot of resistance from the community. And then one of the council members, the mayor at the time, actually said, if council's not interested in this, then there's no sense in continuing to waste staff time. And then it was mentioned that if we were going to not move forward with implementing a citywide contract for trash, then the entire plan would really need to be rewritten. And so, and a new plan adopted, and then that just never took place. So that is why we are still working with our current solid waste plan from 1993. So staff's recommendation at this time, you know, we have to, if we're gonna move this, if we're gonna go this route, if we are interested in looking at a citywide contract, that it makes sense to update our solid waste study and adopt a new solid waste plan before making any decisions related to the solid waste management in the community. We know we have this 2-year grace period, so if it takes us 6 months to update our solid waste study and then adopt a new solid waste plan in the meantime, we think that we have plenty of time to do that. What we would probably do, believe it or not, budget planning season's right around the corner. Feels like we just got that adopted, but if this is the direction that council would like to go, we will just make sure that we include funding for the solid waste study. And probably a little bit extra to kind of help us with the planning and coordination of this.
Are there any grants or anything available through the solid waste district?
You took the words right out of my mouth. So the 2005 study was funded with a grant. So we would explore opportunities in the next few months to see if we could find something. Does anyone have any questions or comment?
Yeah, I think we should definitely move forward with the adopting a new solid waste plan, as well as keep exploring the options of the city contract as well, and what the cost would be for that and how we implement that. Yes. I just would like to have a contingency plan if Republic is not able to continue to provide service, so.
Questions or comments?
I've been waiting 2 weeks for mine to get picked up right now, so I'm trying to figure out what to do.
I did send an email to Heartland today and let them know that Northfield, as well as Spring Ridge and Oakmont had not been picked up this week.
There was a truck driver did it today.
Pardon me?
There was a truck driving that way today when I left this morning. I don't know.
No, it's not
It
been
didn't
picked
pick up.
up.
Okay, I haven't called yet.
Nope.
Right,
Well, thank you.
absolutely.
All right. No other question or comments, or I will adjourn the work session. Back at 7 for city council. 7.
Where do you say, sir, Mayor?
I got it.
Oh, great, all knowing one.
It's not that, it's fire military industry. We start on time. Okay. 7 o'clock, want to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Kushner,
Here.
Lund,
Here.
Bentley,
Here.
Holmberg,
Here. Okay, approval of city council minutes. We have a city council minute meeting, September 22nd. The 2 members were out. The 3rd member, Nolan, Councilman Brooks, isn't here. We can either have to abstain or if you're comfortable with the minutes,
I plan to abstain.
okay. Okay, so let's take the roll and then.
Kushner,
Abstain. Yeah.
Lund,
Abstain.
Bentley,
Yes.
Holmberg,
Approved. Okay, city council minutes, October 11th.
Move to approve.
Kushner.
Yeah.
Lund,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes. All right, adoption of agenda.
Move to adopt.
Kushner,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes. All right, item number 5, presentation, crime prevention through environmental design. Chief Lockhart.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. So 2 years ago, I went to, no, actually it was last year, I went to a training in Jeff City, put on by a retiree from the Tampa Police Department. Tampa has a very robust, it's called CEPT, Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design Program. And so I thought I'd share some of these elements Mayor Holmberg had requested with you. It's a great way to prevent crime without actually having to have big iron gates, deadbolt locks, cameras, all this stuff. It's really using the natural environment to be able to do some of that stuff. CEPT is the proper design and effective use of the built environment that can lead to the reduction in the incidence and fear of crime and thereby improve the quality of life. In other words, the site is laid out well, the likelihood of it being targeted for a crime may be reduced. These are your 4 strategies. One is natural surveillance. We'll go into more detail on each one of these. The other one is territorial reinforcement, natural access control, and then the most important one that a lot of people forget about is maintenance. So when you talk about natural surveillance, you're wanting to design a space that will allow visibility by legitimate users and keep possible intruders under observation. So think about the little old lady in the neighborhood that sits in the front looking out and can tell you everything that goes on in that neighborhood. That's natural surveillance. But when you think about like a park, you think about being able to see all the areas of the park. So if I'm there playing with my kid, I can see the restroom, I can see the playground equipment, I can also see the road. When you see a lot of park designs, you see things that kind of hide those things because you don't want to see them, but you detract from natural surveillance. And then you also invite users that you do not want to use the space to be there and possibly commit crime. You want to make the offender's behavior more easily noticeable. So examples, windowed stairwells. So you look at some old buildings, they don't want you to see the stairs to the building. Great place for a bad guy to hide. And so aesthetically it's pleasing, but from a safety standpoint, you want to be able to see those stairwells so you can see people going up and down. And if you're going up the stairwell, you want to be able to see that. So if you look at modern buildings, you see things like glass stairwells. That's the CEPT principle where you can see the whole staircase. And so if something's happening there, somebody from outside the building would be able to see it and alert the police. We're going to provide a good visual connection between residential and or commercial units and public environments such as streets, common areas, parks, sidewalks, parking areas, and alleys. So the Main Street project, activating that alley, is a great example of how you create natural surveillance in an area that would normally be something that no one would want to go into. So for example, last night we were out, or Saturday night, we were down there watching everybody after homecoming, going in and out of the bars. And I can't tell you how many times I saw people taking pictures in the alley, taking selfies, sitting on the benches, and really enjoying that space. So bringing that additional lighting, bringing the murals, the wall art, the benches, the plants, which the plants got used for some other things, but at least they didn't take them, right?
those things are things that bring people to that space. And then it also discourages people who are wanting to commit crimes from lying in wait to get people who are entering that space. So if you look at this stairwell, you've got an open design. The guardrail, the stairs allow you to see, anybody walking by can see. And then also as a resident, if you're up there, you're able to see out to the street as well. So the parking lot is under natural surveillance. So that if somebody's trying to break into cars, you can see out the windows and see, or if you're on the balcony or on one of the stairwells, you can see. The windows here allow patrons to observe activity on the street around the businesses. And a lot of times what you see is when people are inside restaurants or any type of area that has a glass window, big glass windows, sometimes they'll face the chairs inside. And so just simply turning those chairs around to face outside creates that natural surveillance. And when somebody outside can see somebody inside looking at them, they're less likely to commit a criminal act. Properly selected, installed, and maintained landscaping allows for unobstructed views of otherwise vulnerable doors and windows. So if you notice the shrubs under the windows, they're trimmed down. In CEPTED, we use something called the 2-foot, 6-foot rule. So we don't want any shrubs on the or ground covering taller than 2 feet. We want all of our trees trimmed up higher than 6 feet. So that way you can see under, nobody can hide behind a tree. You can see up very tall. And then in front of the windows, no one can stand behind a shrub and be able to get their way into your house through a window and without anybody seeing them from the road. So when you drive around neighborhoods, take a look at this 2-foot, 6-foot rule, especially around the front window of a lot of homes. You'll see a lot of them in Warrensburg that really don't follow that rule. And it's a real simple thing to do to help not only show off the front of your house, but also create an environment that's not likely to contribute to criminal activity. The other thing you can do is in front of your house is plant thorny bushes around your windows. So if somebody does get in there, it's not pleasant for them to stay very long. Territorial reinforcement is the second principle. It's marking territorial control of the space while discouraging potential offenders who perceive this control and avoid it. You want design elements like sidewalks, landscaping, porches to help distinguish between public and private areas. You also have semi-private areas that are like transitional areas. So your front porch of your house is clearly a private area that's usually defined by a sidewalk that leads up to it. Obviously, inside of your front door is the door itself creates that territorial reinforcement. So if I go inside, I know that I'm in a very private area of your house. People take more interest in something they own or they feel intrinsically involved. So accentuating a building with entrances with architectural elements. So like in this case, you've got a sidewalk that's public, and then you've got a gated area with some landscaping over it that announces that you're now going into a semi-private area, a courtyard of an apartment complex. You will then find doors and porches that would be very private areas. So in this space, they've done a good job with keeping the vegetation trimmed. They've added some visual elements to it that help define the space. Using front porches and stoops between the street and sidewalk and residences also indicate transitions. So in this one, you've got this wall that indicates that the yard itself is private, but you've got a stoop that leads through there and to the front porch that lets people know this is maybe a semi-private area. The sidewalks in the street are obviously public areas. Identifying shops with wall signs and address numbers at the rear if parking is provided in the rear. So if you're in a shopping area and you've got parking in the rear, you want to be able to let people know where to go or what's there. It helps them to be able to find their way. It's called wayfinding. And so anytime you have an area that's confusing, adding wayfinding helps people find where they're supposed to go. Natural access control employs elements like doors, shrubs, fences, gates to deny admission to a crime target or to create perception among offenders that there is a risk in selecting the target. So think about a house that has shrubs covering the window and one that doesn't have shrubs covering the window. Which one are you likely as a bad guy to go victimize? The one, obviously, it gives you more concealment. Primary thrust of an access control strategy is to deny access to a crime target. You can use things like physical and mechanical means, locks, alarms, bars. They can supplement natural access control if needed. Putting a fence around the neighborhood protects the playground from children wandering off, and it also inhibits offenders coming in. What you want to do with CEPTED, though, is you want to try and limit those things so you can use the natural environment so it doesn't look like a prison. Using fences, walkways, and landscaping to direct visitors to the proper entrance and away from private areas is a way to create that natural access control. And that's something that's still desirable. So like this fence, if you look at it, although they're not permitted here in Warrensburg, they do create a see-through barrier. So it's not going to prevent anyone from having good natural surveillance, but it also creates that directing someone to the entry if they want to go up to the house. Again, plantings and architectural designs can do that. You've got a columned entryway, some beautiful landscaping there. This is from Florida, so we're probably not going to be able to do something like that here, but you never know. But it helps highlight the entrance. So that tells people where they're supposed to go. Signs are another way that you can direct visitors to the appropriate buildings, entrances, and parking. We've got a real good wayfinding system here in Warrensburg if you're looking for general places like the downtown business area and things like that. But these are really important, especially when you get into like parks or areas where the where to go may be confusing. It's good to have signs like this. When we were in the class, we did an assessment for the Link down in Jeff City. I don't know if any of you ever been to the Link. It's their community center. It's brand new. But what's funny is the backside and the front side are identical. So if you pull around back, you think you're at the front entrance, but you're not. So the doors are locked and you've got to walk all the way around this huge building. And so one of the things we suggested for them was to create a grand entrance and do some signage to be able to direct people which way to go. They also, the Lincoln University football team has their facilities in the basement of the Link. And so when we're coming around the back, this actually looks like the grand entrance, but it's not a public entrance. It's for the university football team. So just designating that with some signs and pedestrian wayfinding is how you create your natural access control. Limit access without completely disconnecting the neighborhood from adjacent neighborhoods. And so again, you've got an archway here that creates some limited access. But the thing you want to avoid is like a gated community where you're not connecting neighborhoods. They're great for security, but they aren't very welcoming. And so those are things that you would not be involved with if you're doing a CEPTED design project. Maintenance is the last thing. Maintenance is really important. Cleaning and repairing, keeping your landscape up needs to be done and performed routinely to encourage the use of the space for the intended purpose and discourage abnormal and criminal use. Maintenance sends a clean signal that someone cares about the space and is likely to defend it against intruders or vandals. So it's that broken windows thing that we talk about a lot of times in policing. If a building has a window that's broken out of it and it doesn't get fixed, that sends a message to people that there's no one that cares about the building. So that another window gets broken out and then another one. And soon you have a building that looks really bad. So when you have a space that isn't well cared for, it discourages legitimate users, but it also encourages illegitimate use. And so that's something that you want to guard against. So maintenance is very important. Keep your structures, fencing, and walkways clean and in good repair. Weedy landscaping grows very quickly. And so making sure that the 2 foot, 6 foot rule is followed is really important. Make sure your sidewalks are in good repair. Again, it sends the message to anyone who wants to commit crime there that there's someone who's living there that cares about the way their home looks, the way their property looks, and it just sends a message that they might want to go find somewhere else. Keep your litter and trash picked up at all times. Again, it's just one of those things that sends the message that somebody's there who cares about how it looks. Trees and shrubs trimmed back away from the windows. You can see here, they've got a little violation there on the right side. That brown shrub needs to be trimmed up a little bit taller off the ground, that 6 foot rule. Lighting is also very important. And lighting is one of those things that people really can overdo very quickly. So when you go to an area, if you've got light, we talk about light intrusion a lot. Older light bulbs are those old Cobra lights and they just kind of go everywhere. The newer LED lights, you're able to focus them a little bit more. And what you want to avoid is polluting with light. So you want to focus your light in areas where you want it to be. When you have good lighting, people feel more comfortable with their surroundings. So how many of you have been in a dark parking lot and you're parked way out and you're like, wow, I'm just kind of a little uncomfortable here. So the more light you can have, the better. The newer LED lights are probably the best because they create a lot of light. They don't use as much energy and there's not as much light lost. The other thing to do with lighting is create a path. So we talked about those natural access points. You can do this with lighting as well. People who are not wanting to commit crimes will tend to stay in the light. And so people who are wanting to commit crimes will be somewhere where it's darker. Design lighting systems for pedestrians that enable them to better see one another and reduce the risk of nighttime walks. Keep pedestrian lighting out of trees. We see this a lot where you've got a big tall light and you've got a little tree planted underneath it. Well, you don't think about how big that tree is going to be. It's going to grow up into the light, and then you just gotten rid of your light. So again, this is the same thing here, talking about making sure you know how tall that tree is going to be. Lower lights are better for a pedestrian path because they won't get blocked by trees and they provide a lot of lighting. Provide see-through decorative fencing that is durable and does not create hiding places for criminals. So if you're thinking about a playground, you want to put a fence around it, nothing wrong with that, but you don't want a 6-foot privacy fence because then you can't see your kids while they're in there, and the bad guys could be in there and you wouldn't be able to see them. So always use that see-through fencing. Anytime you can, you don't detract from your natural surveillance, which is that guiding principle that you want to create. 76% of house burglaries occur through forced entry on rear entrances. Why is it we always have our biggest and best locks on the front doors? So again, just thinking about this stuff in common sense really can help quite a bit. All right, that's one section. And then I've got a couple of sections I want to show you about some ways to use art to create secure and safer areas in your town. This stuff is really cool. So let's see. So think about like your utility boxes. This is an example here of taking a grungy old utility box that has graffiti on it and putting an aquarium with fish on it. Another thing here, graffiti reduction. One of the things that we find when we have these murals up, even in big cities where there's a lot of graffiti, is people tend to not do graffiti on murals. And there's a respect for the artist. And so we very rarely see murals get vandalized with graffiti. So it's a good way to abate graffiti and keep it from coming back. Down at the bottom, there's just some more examples as well. And I'm just showing this to you more for the pictures than anything, because there's a lot of cool pictures here that people do with these. Again, some more examples here of utility boxes. One in Tampa with a little kind of Florida feel to it. And these are all in your packet, so you can see them a little closer. The treasure chest there, that's a good one. Nice 3D artwork. That's a utility box. So it looks 3D, but it's not. I'll show you some more in the next group of slides that are really, they'll blow your socks off. There's another one. And I mean, here's a real simple one, just some kids playing. Little sunsets there. So the thing that these do too, so they've got a map here where all these things are. So you can grab this map, and what you've just done now is you've created a natural surveillance tour for all of your people. So people go there, they take pictures of them, whether it's a selfie or whatever it is, just like we saw Saturday night with the alley. People go there and they're taking a picture because it's a cool place to take a picture. And so that's what you have here. Some more, you got a bookcase built into one of the utility boxes, just another 3D mural. The 3D murals just blew me away. These things are good, but wait till you see the next ones. They're really neat. I think that's the end of that one, Gary. This guy's name is Eric Growy, and he does 3D murals. He's from Washington. And I mean, his stuff's really, really cool. So this is the before shot of this building. As you can see, it's a parking garage. There's not any signage there. So you have zero opportunity for natural surveillance in this building. So they did this mural on the whole thing. And this one is really, I mean, this is one of my favorite ones. That's what it looks like after they were done. So now it looks like you've got windows with these big plaster statues and everything. It's got a balcony you can see there with somebody out there standing on it. So if you're driving by and looking at that, you're going to think, wow, there's people in there watching me, and you're going to just be awed by the grandness of this. So neat stuff. Here's another one. This is a shopping mall. So they turned it into that. So again, you're creating natural surveillance because this is something that somebody's going to come by and they're going to have to see it to believe it. That's a close-up of it. So it's looking out. They had that about right in the middle panel there. So it looks like a waterfall. We'll step back. The blue on the top is the sky, the actual sky. There's a brewery here. This one's cool because it looks like you're looking down the hallway with some part of the brewery there, with the guys barreling, putting in barrels all the alcohol and stuff. A little further back there. Again, another 3D thing that's not there. It's just painted on the wall. And there's the people aren't painted there. Those are people that are actually there for an event, and that's your backdrop now, rather than that old building that you saw earlier. There's that one, completely transformed. There's another one. So it started off like this. So you got a few windows and stuff. And now it looks like you've got a bunch of windows and a big grand entrance. There's another one. This guy does some amazing work. So you can see, I mean, it's like you're looking through a window out into something else. Those windows are actually not there on the side of the building. There's a pointer. Is there a pointer, Gary? Okay. There you can see how you can see it's just one dimensional there, but they've created the whole side of that building to make it look like it's a 3-story building with people looking out. This is in Washington. So again, keep an eye on that one sidewall. So see how they've created this grand building now that wasn't there before from that. That's on the side of that building. This one was one of my favorite ones. It's the gateway to Steubenville. So I don't know if that's Daniel Crockett or whatever, but you're kind of looking out into the wilderness of a time during, when they were exploring the West. Steubenville, Ohio, it's a steel factory there. The detail is just incredible. I don't know how he does this. I really don't, but I'm a big fan of his work. All right. Anybody have any questions about any of it? They want to know how we get Eric Roy to come to Washington or Warrensburg and get a mural for us? Yeah. One person does, yeah.
Sort of. I think we're doing a pretty good job around town.
Fantastic job.
How does this get disseminated out? So like to folks that are designing neighborhoods, contractors, businesses, how do we?
Well, in Tampa, SEPTED is part of all the design review process. So Barb will not like that because it would add something else in. But like the guy that's developing West Clark, I've been talking to him about SEPTED stuff since he came to our first meeting. And he's familiar with it. And he's talking about trying to incorporate some of this into the planning that they're doing out there. But in Tampa, they have to, by ordinance, they have to have SEPTED principles incorporated into all of the new building designs and all of those things. So it's an extra requirement. The police department is part of the plan review because they're the ones who were trained on all of this. Most of your architects who are building, they're familiar with these principles because so many cities adopt them and incorporate them into their designs. So it's not a huge thing. It's not even really an expensive thing necessarily. It's just common sense and thinking about things in a different way. So one of the things that when I was looking at Danielle and I were talking about parks, one park was planned. They had a berm between the street and the playground, and it was designed to reduce noise so that when you're there, you're not hearing as much of the road noise. The problem with that is now you can't see the playground from the street. They had another thing where the restroom, they did the same thing with the restroom, so you couldn't see the restroom from where you were sitting. And then they had some seating that was in the shade. But it was blocked by a restroom. And so people are sitting out in the sun because they can watch their kids at the playground rather than sit in the shade because their view is blocked. So it's just thinking about where do you place things, thinking about how do we get people going toward the right place to do what they want to do, and then discourage people who are illegitimate users of the space from using it.
Well, I know that I think it'd be a good conversation for staff to have of how we disseminate it and what's going. I know about 3 years ago, I started going to Kansas City to for just to see things. And we talked to some folks in an alleyway that at first you thought, well, what are they doing in the alley? And the business owners and stuff, because, you know, I'm a social person. So I asked them, what are they doing? And they liked the folks painting and the
Yeah.
different things. And they liked something for their kids to do. There's a lot of fathers out there just, and this happened to be a group of guys, so I'm not being sexist. It gives our children stuff to do. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of fascinating.
Murals are very cool. They've gone from sort of gang tagging to now, I mean, there's muralists out there like Eric Growy that just does incredible work. And, you know, ours are really great here. I mean, you're activating a space, the new one you just approved, an area that really no one goes to unless you're just driving through. Now people have a reason to go there and look at it and check it out. And it's really neat. It's good stuff.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So we have this item number 6, second reading of an ordinance 6-1. An ordinance accepting the street and stormwater improvements for the Pines at Hale Lake subdivision for maintenance by the city of Warrensburg, Missouri. By Danielle.
Yeah, so we did the first reading at our last city council meeting. This is to accept the stormwater and street. We previously accepted the sanitary sewer at a previous meeting. So this is just for acceptance this evening.
For a motion, if no question.
Move to approve.
Kushner.
Yeah.
Oh, yep. This is for adoption or rejection. An ordinance accepting the street and stormwater improvements for the Pines at Hale Lake subdivision for maintenance by the city of Warrensburg, Missouri. This is for adoption or rejection. Kushner,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Holmberg.
Yes. Okay, item 7, a first and second reading, a ordinance accepting the sanitary sewer main extension associated with Stonewall Heights LLC for maintenance by the city of Warrensburg, Missouri, presented by Danielle.
Mayor, City Council, thank you again. There are 2 new houses that are located in the vicinity of Poplar Street and Hawthorne Boulevard. There was a sewer main extension that was necessary to provide sewer to those 2 houses. That extension has been inspected and has passed all the testing requirements. The houses are ready to be put on the market. Therefore, the developer has respectfully requested that this go as a first and second reading.
Move to pass that ordinance to second reading by title.
Kushner,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Holmberg.
Yes. Now you do. Approval.
Okay. This is for adoption or rejection. First and second reading, accepting the sanitary sewer main extension associated with the Stonewall Heights LLC for maintenance by the city of Warrensburg, Missouri for adoption or rejection. Kushner,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Holmberg.
Yes. Okay, item 8.1, a resolution amending personnel policies regarding performance, evaluation, pay adjustment, holidays, domestic violence and or sexual violence, leave and disciplinary action. Great.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. Back in April of 2021, the City Council adopted Resolution 2193. And that resolution approved several changes to the Personnel Policy Manual. That update incorporated several changes that had been made over the course of several years into one overall change in that personnel manual with that resolution. One change that was inadvertently omitted related to the timing of start dates, promotion dates, and merit raises. And then additionally, during the 2021 legislative session, 2 laws were passed by the state government requiring the city to make changes to its personnel policy, and the federal government recognized Juneteenth as an official federal holiday. These items all prompted the need for revisions to the current personnel policy. The first change this evening is section 300.06 to the performance evaluations and pay adjustments. And this is to specify when a new employee or an employee receiving a promotion is eligible or not eligible for a merit and or a wage increase. We had a administrative regulation that indicated when a new employee was not eligible for a merit or wage increase at the beginning of the year if they started employment on or after July 1st. That same administrative regulation also indicated that an employee who'd received a promotion on or after October 1st of that year was also not eligible. This change eliminates the language that this regulation applied also to that promotionary process. And this will bring this formally into the personnel policy manual. This change to language was inadvertently omitted in that change to the personnel policy manual in April, and we want to bring it forward and make it part of the manual. Section 400.03 to holidays, and this includes the addition of the Juneteenth holiday to the list of recognized holidays, granting time off to employees unless the business needs require otherwise the employee to work on a holiday. And this is to observe the Juneteenth holiday and celebrate formally African-American freedom and emancipation. Further changes to that section include the total of 2 floating holidays instead of just 1. This would eliminate this city manager's discretionary time off language that is currently in there. Again, as our workforce grows more diverse, employees may celebrate holidays that are not currently observed by the organization. And so this change provides the employees with the discretion to use their floating holidays as appropriate and necessary. The total number of holidays will increase to 13, and the floating proration table will be corrected to reflect this change. The third change is to section 700.03, the disciplinary action section. And this is adding language to specifically comply with the state law regarding police officer investigation and changes to police department policy resulting from those state law requirements. So what this does is the city will comply not only with departmental policy guidelines, but also will follow the state law regarding the new process developed for administrative personnel investigations or the questioning of law enforcement officers. And the Warrensburg Police Department memorandum and policy for that investigation procedure was included in your packet as attachment B. And then finally, section 400.33 is an addition, a brand new addition to the personnel manual as a result of some state law that was passed for domestic violence or sexual violence leave. And this policy is added to comply with the new state law provision that does provide unpaid leave benefits to victims of domestic violence and their family or household members. And it does require passage and communication by the 27th. And that's another reason why we were bringing this change to you all in this tonight. The staff does recommend approval of these changes to the personnel policy manual, and copies of the above personnel policy changes were attached as well with this letter. Do you have any questions?
Really kind of proud of Warrensburg for leading on the Juneteenth. Motion.
Move to approve as presented.
Kushner,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes. Okay, item 9, appearances on to the council not listed on the agenda. None? Okay. All right, item 10, miscellaneous matters from the mayor and or city council. Warren. Okay. Director of Finance report. Marcella?
There's lots of information there. We pretty well landed in a pretty good spot as far as end of year in relationship to receiving the AIPA money and the CARES Act money. So you've heard those discussions and we'll have more decisions to make going forward.
Thank you. City manager report. Danielle?
I am happy to report that there were 50 mules in the parade of mules on Saturday, and I am happy to report that the street sweeper held up and we were able to get the street swept before we had the rain.
Anything else? Okay, that's it. Now I'm gonna adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Yeah.